This is Dr. Chris's Radio Horror Show here on 91.3 FM WCW, kicking off the fall season, kicking off lead into October, even though it is only September 26th, the end of the week. We will be in October, beginning 31 days of Halloween. What better way to start the fall season and leading into October, but to talk a little bit about graves and stones and stuff like that and the dead. And tonight on the show with us to talk about graveyards and gravestones and preservation of all things to do with tombstones and things of that nature, we have Sarah Gamond, who is the commissioner of cemeteries here in Massachusetts, on the show with us. A longtime friend of, well, me. Thank you for coming on the show with us, Sarah. Yes, no problem whatsoever. I think I played your sister's music one time. There was like a song she sent me years ago that she was playing in regards to something she was doing at the Ralph's Rock Diner. And that is like the closest I think either one of you have ever come on the show or been part of the show.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, but actually no, I took your, that's right, I took your sister to the Gothic Formal. Did she ever show you those pictures?
You know, I think I do remember seeing those. Yes.
Yes. It was
it
was
a lot of fun.
Oh, yeah, it was okay. It was a little expensive, but it was okay. I got comped some tickets because the people who ran it came on the show, so it was definitely cool. But for anyone not familiar with what your position is and what you do, why don't you explain it and then we'll go into some of the questions.
Okay, sure, cool. So I am officially a cemetery commissioner for the town that I live in, and basically what we do is we care for and maintain the local cemeteries, and we sell burial plots and that kind of thing to people that need them. So that's my official job, but my unofficial job is doing cemetery preservation, which is kind of like my passion, and you know, I love cemeteries and things to do with death, so you know, I love historical research and looking up people's death certificates and all that fun stuff. And so I have a blog, that's my personal blog, called it The Eternal Residence of Pine Grove, where I post most of my cemetery doings. So yeah, that about sums it up.
How did you find a position like this? I had never even thought of that there was a commissioner of, you know, this type of thing. I mean, it never even dawned on me until you posted it on Facebook that you had been elected by the town, and I was like, "That's awesome! I didn't know that existed." Was that like, was it part of like the yearly election of like, oh, these are all the positions that you can apply for, and you were like, "There's a cemetery one. I want to be the cemetery girl."
Yep, it's a 3-year term, and so basically it's a board. So like there's, you know, I think our board has 3 members, and so basically you run for election like you'd run for any other office, but of course it's great. It's the most like apolitical position you could possibly take in a political thing. So, you know, you just run on your ticket, and I basically had to go collect signatures to get on the ballot.
Did you have to go door to door?
And people voted for me, and I was in. I actually ran 2 separate years. In the first year, I lost to someone else that was running. I ran as a write-in, so people had to actually write my name and address to get me in. So that year I didn't win, but I had quite a few votes. And then the next year I ran again and I won. So I'm serving a 3-year term as cemetery commissioner.
Now, is this like this is like a full-time job too, right?
Well, no, it's more like a volunteer position. You know, you don't get paid anything for it. You just have to go to monthly meetings. So yeah, it's monthly meeting type deal. So, but yeah, it's.
Do you think it's
interesting
just,
though?
Is it a matter of like the town doesn't have like the budget for that sort of thing?
You know, I'm not sure if any of them are paid positions. I know like there's a state level cemetery commission as well, and I don't know if they pay people, but I'm not sure. I know we don't. I don't know if other places they do.
What are some of the activity? What how many hours a week do you have to devote to this, and what are some of the things that you have to do week to week?
Well, you know, we pretty much just do like 1 meeting a month, especially because we're in the pandemic. We really like haven't done a heck of a lot. But we do have to like go and sign bills, like if there's maintenance bills for the cemetery, like lawn mowing and that kind of usual stuff. And then people, if they need to buy burial plots, they can come to us, and we basically sell them a plot in any town-owned cemetery that is open and that they would like. And so we take care of that official business. And I'm their like secretary, so I have to take their meeting minutes and that kind of thing. So, you know.
What are with all how many let me start over. How many different graveyards do you have to monitor and drive? What's the furthest you have to drive out to? Because you're only staying in the state, right? Or are you just staying in the Douglas area?
Yeah, we're just within the town on
Okay.
the one that I'm on, and I think I want to say we have 16 cemeteries in town.
In Douglas? Really?
Yeah, but a lot of
Wow.
them are family plots.
Oh,
So
okay.
family plots like they fall under our commission because they're like within the town, but they might be like a smaller. There's a lot of like smaller lots that.
I was
really
gonna say,
we
is
don't
this
do
like
anything with. So basically, we have like 3 main ones, but there are 16 total in town with 3 main ones that we care for.
I was gonna say, is Douglas the unknown murder capital of the world, like in the Lost Boys?
Well, Douglas is like pretty old, so it's like I think Douglas Center Cemetery is like 17 something, and then our other one is Pine Grove, which is the one I write my blog about. And Pine Grove is 1812 was the first internment. So, and then I think we have like a couple other littler ones, but mainly we just like, the big ones are pretty much our main deal. And Douglas Center is really the only one that's currently accepting burials. The rest of them are officially closed unless you're related to someone that's already there.
Are there any famous people buried in the area that you have control over?
Famous people, that's a good question. Well, I don't think there's anyone super famous.
Okay, I'll move to Douglas and die, and then you can bury me and be like, look,
Yeah, there you go.
this is the Radio of Horror host. He wrote Vlada.
Yeah, there's a few like interesting, like Civil War veterans. Like Pine Grove has a lot of Civil War veterans. Douglas Center has a lot of Revolutionary War veterans, and yeah, it's kind of interesting. A lot of early like, pioneer type people that started the town are buried here. So there's some interesting ones.
It's funny you mentioned Civil War, and I made the joke about Vlada. The short film that we made called Dracula's Guest back in 2014, we filmed it in a Civil War cemetery out in Sterling, Massachusetts.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah,
and that's cool.
In fact, when we filmed it, we had to film it twice because when we were watching the footage, we noticed we accidentally left all of the American flags sitting up, and we're supposed to be in like Transylvania. And there's no American flags in Transylvania.
just a slight little non-chronological thing, right?
Yeah, a little bit.
Oh, cool. Oh, that's neat.
Has there been any unusual supernatural activity in any of the cemeteries? Have you ever had an encounter with a werewolf or a vampire or somebody playing a practical joke on you and they had a good laugh?
Well, I can tell you one story where after we had reset, basically what it was is there was a headstone that had sunken into the ground. Now, believe it or not, like when you see those Civil War headstones and, they're kind of like 4 inches thick and, kind of squarish with that shield design, those are actually like 34 inches long. Believe it or not, that much of the stone is underneath the ground.
Wow.
So if these were put in the ground and they weren't like, in the old days, they didn't really like fill in with gravel and a whole bunch of stuff first, they kind of just set it in the ground. And now sometimes over, especially where we're in New England and we have a lot of rocks underground and freeze thaws and that kind of thing that can sometimes push stones up or push stones down depending on how the ground's moving. And so we had a Civil War monument that was literally maybe like 2 inches left above the ground. You could barely see it. You couldn't read the name on it. You could barely identify it as like a headstone because there was that much not showing. And so I got out there, and this was before I was a commissioner, but I did a little digging, and I could see the plate of the shield design, and so I was like, oh my god, it's like a headstone. So I was all excited about it. I got on the town page and a couple people jumped on and they were like, "Oh, we'll come help you. We'll reset it. We'll dig it up and we'll put some gravel under it." And we did it all to preservation standards. So we dug it up, and actually the other people dug it up. I actually wasn't there the day they finished doing it, but I came after when they were done, like in the evening, and I cleaned the stone with my special cleaner that's safe for headstones. It's the same thing they use in Arlington National Cemetery. And so I came to clean it afterwards, and it was getting to be about sunset by the time I went out there. And I cleaned it, I brushed it with, a nice natural bristle brush, and rinsed it with some clean water, made it all nice, and it was looking good. And I went to, basically I kind of knelt down one last time to take a look at it, and I'm kind of ground level, eye level with it, and I hear someone running up behind me, and I thought, oh, one of the guys must have left their stuff behind or something, they must be coming back for something. I turned around and there was nobody there.
Oi.
So that was an interesting little thing, and I'm like, I was like, that was because I heard footsteps on the ground behind me, and I turned around fast, like, oh, who's running up behind me here? But there was nobody there. At least nobody I could see.
Very creepy.
Yeah, so that's my creepy tale.
What do you do on the side with the Pine Grove Cemetery? That's the one that's right next to
Yes.
that's around that's
It's in my hood.
it's in your hood. Okay, yeah, let's just say that. Let's just say it's in the hood. Okay.
In my hood, yes.
I didn't want to give away any other personal information. I'm like, wait, no. So it's in so it's in the hood. That is that's a tiny little cemetery. I think I stuck a YouTube video. It's up on my YouTube. That cemetery's on my YouTube channel. It's on my Facebook Radio of Horror video section.
Cool.
Yeah, I think if you look under Radio of Horror videos, and the video section of Radio of Horror, I think there is a video there from the last time. It was 2016. I think it was 2016 or 17.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
I'll have to check that out. That's cool.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
what? What do you do with that cemetery?
Well, with that, the interesting thing, I started working on what they call the marker survey for that particular cemetery, which is where you the cemetery is so old. It started in 1812. Its last burial, I want to say, was like late 1970s or so. So there's a lot of graves in there, and the majority of them are older, 1800s or so. And
that was me, by the way. So it was the Douglas French Cemetery originally. That's what you told me.
Yeah, it was a French cemetery. There's a lot of, if the very front corner of the cemetery, if you're facing the entrance of the cemetery, off to your left would be like a very large children's section, the majority of which would be French, and most of the inscriptions are also in French. So it's kind of interesting. There's a lot of kids there. There's
a lot of kids. Do you know why?
A lot of kids, yeah. A lot of babies. A lot of early 1800s, before antibiotics, before all that kind of stuff. There's
wow.
People dying of scarlet fever, people dying of, pretty, simple illnesses that, we hopefully don't die of today. But
yeah, I mean, we have COVID to worry about.
Right, exactly. I know. Yeah, we got something new, but they worried about other things that now we don't worry about, and we worry about things that they never heard of. So
the cemetery I told you that I went to have the picnic at, the grave that we sat beside actually had a bench sitting right next to it. And we found out that that woman who was buried there very recently, by the way, had died of COVID.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
But she was in her 70s, I believe.
Wow.
Yeah, but and what's funny is that my my date, she she said like a thank you to the grave for allowing us to sit there and listen to our tales of woe, because it was a pour the heart out kind of evening of tales of things, and my grandmother had just passed away, so it was a lot of opening up about stuff.
Right. Yeah.
The Douglas French Cemetery video, I'm actually watching it right now. So it was around dusk, and according to the video timestamp, it was like 5 years ago.
Oh wow.
What's the difference between the sizes of graves? Are they just sunken into the ground? Are they all supposed to be the same size? Because I remember some of these look like they had basically sunk right into the ground.
Yeah, a lot of them, some of them are sinking because they didn't like put gravel under them at the time that they were placed. So there's been, I think, three that we've raised up in maybe the last, well, definitely within the last 5 years. One of which was I did it was a little stone. It was a child's grave. It was off to the left there. And the weird thing about it was like, I knew it was down and it was like you could barely see it and it was starting to disappear. And one evening I'm like, well, I'm just going to go and pull it up and reset it. And I had the gravel and the sand and the water and all the stuff you need to kind of pack it down. And I pulled it up and it happened to be the person who died's death anniversary the day I decided to do it, which I thought was really weird because it was under the ground and there was like no way for me to know that except when I dug it up already. So that was very strange.
How do you pull a grave up? I mean, do you have to get like a giant piece of equipment to help you?
Well, there is equipment, but I don't have any. So like pretty much it's just physical labor.
Oh, wow.
So you just have to really carefully like dig around it, and basically like as little metal as possible that you use because you don't want to, especially like things like marble, like the older headstones, they're real delicate. So, you have to be really careful digging around them. But a lot of the times, you just have to kind of work your way digging and kind of just pull it up. And I only ever did like the little children ones myself. Like I didn't do the big 34-inch one. That was someone from the highway department was kind enough to come down on their day off and do that. So, but yeah, cool. I see your little video you sent me. That's awesome.
Yeah, you should take a look at it. Considering it was 5 years ago before you. I'm assuming this is before you started your work there. So maybe you can take a look and see how it looked compared to 5 years ago versus 2020. 6 years later. And
right? Yeah, definitely.
And if you know a
That's
video
pretty
editor,
cool.
maybe possibly splice the two together to show the evolution between the two. Start where I did. Start your
Right.
video and then get a video editor to splice the two together to show the comparison and the contrast between what you've done and what used to be.
Yeah, that would be really cool. And like I know like in doing the marker survey, there was like, ones that were flipped over because they've been broken, or like there was a flat marker that I found, like, the flat stones that just lay on the ground, and it had been so overgrown with grass that you didn't know it was there. So, and it's amazing how quickly that will actually happen. Like people think it takes years to lose a stone that way, but it actually happens a lot faster.
What where did this love, passion, hobby for this type of thing come from? Where did it start?
That's a good question. I actually, before I started doing anything with Pine Grove, I took a seminar with a couple out of Burrillville, Rhode Island. And of course, their name is escaping me now, the Meducci's, I believe. And they basically did like a little seminar showing you like the D2, which is the biological cleaner you use, and like what kind of brushes are safe. And, I always love cemeteries. I just think that they're kind of peaceful, and I love the history of it. And, when I was young, we used to go to the cemetery when we were teenagers and, like hang out there. And I always kind of had a love for cemeteries. And then this one is nearby me. So I was curious about all the people that were there. And, it was a little bit uncared for when I came here. And I came here in 2005. I believe the town took it over as their cemetery in 2007. And I didn't start doing Pine Grove until probably 2 years ago. So yeah, but I kind of got all into the history of it. Like I'd go out there and read the stones and mark it on the map where the stone was. And then I'd research a little bit about the person, find their cause of death, what they did for work, who their family members were. Like one of my dream goals is to do like a Pine Grove family tree, because a lot of the people are related in some way, and you might not know it because they're not in the same plot. But like, there's a lot of connections, either by marriage or, someone is someone's brother, so it's interesting. And I just love learning, like, reading people's death certificates and learning about what they did and how they died. And,
Is there
it's
anybody?
just,
Is there anybody in the Pine Grove Cemetery or any of the other cemeteries in Douglas that you and your is it just you, or do you have a staff that works with you?
well, when I do my preservation stuff, it's usually just me.
Do you?
I have had people offer to help, which is awesome. And, I've worked with other people, like in different groups, like down in Rhode Island. There's, I think, I'm not sure if they're called Blackstone Valley Historical Society, but they're basically like the Northern Rhode Island group that does cemeteries in Rhode Island. And if you've ever been to like the publicly owned state cemeteries in Rhode Island, there's a lot of them that are really, really overgrown. And I mean, like lost in the woods type overgrown. So, I've gone down a couple of times to help them with recovery there, like, basically digging in the ground to find pieces of stones that were smashed up and vandalized over the years. And, I just find it really rewarding to do that, and yeah.
Has there ever been somebody in the Douglas, any of the Douglas cemeteries that you have not been able to identify? Do you have to have their body exhumed so you can get them a proper stone, because the stone they're in is so rotted away and the town has no record of who the body is? Have you ever had to start like an
Actually,
investigation?
Pine Grove was a pauper cemetery. So like early on, if someone died and they had no family, like assume they were, just kind of a wanderer, or, they just nobody claimed their body, they were poor, the town would bury them in Pine Grove at the town's expense without a headstone. So there is lots of burials in Pine Grove that don't have headstones. So like when you go there, you'll notice like it looks pretty open in the front there,
Mm-hmm.
but that's actually considered a full cemetery because there's a lot of unmarks there. And I've actually done like some research in finding who is there that's unmarked, but I have no way of knowing where in Pine Grove they actually are. But like if I was lucky, sometimes like the town clerk of old would write on the death certificate what cemetery they were going to at least. And a lot of the times, if they were poor or they were unclaimed, they would go to Pine Grove. So I do have a few unmarked people that I know are there, but don't know where they are.
Do you have the ability to do a seismic graphic analysis of the land to find bodies that don't have graves?
The technology exists to do that, but I don't think it's anything
What about
they've ever entertained doing.
But what about maybe
But,
like a grant or something like that? Finding out if there's some grant money that you can get to get that technology. Like...
Yeah, right. It would be interesting because I mean, I don't know if you've ever heard of divining rods or used divining rods, but they're little copper, like basically, maybe a foot long copper little poles. Yep. That you can find groundwater with them. So some people use them to like dig wells and whatnot. It's kind of like it's almost like a mystical old timey type of thing though. But what's interesting about them is my sister gave me a set of them for my birthday a couple of years ago, and supposedly you can find unmarked graves with them as well because the copper in them detects like a change in the magnetism of the ground or whatever, like when you're walking over something that has been previously dug up or maybe has a burial in it. So if you walk with those, they'll spin around if you're passing over like what would probably be someone's final resting place. And so I do have a set of those that I've walked around with and, can kind of tell here and there that there's people buried. So that's like the old timey sort of, version of how to do that. And then there's the modern day, like you can get those machines that can show you like a radar picture of what's under the ground, which would be awesome. Like I, think that would be really cool to be able to do someday.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, there seems to be grant money all the time for the weirdest things. I don't see why
Right?
there wouldn't be state or federal. I mean, both. You can look at both, or hook up with a local college. Like any college in the area that might have interest in helping do this, or find a college that
Right?
already has their own cemetery preservation, and maybe they do have the equipment, and they'll let you borrow it if they can be involved with the project.
Yeah, that's an interesting idea.
Where
It's
can
kind
people?
of amazing the technology we have today.
Right, definitely. Where can people find more about your personal project? Why don't you give away the Facebook?
So my Facebook would be The Eternal Residents of Pine Grove. And I also am on Instagram, and I believe my name on there is the same or close to it. So if you look for The Eternal Residents of Pine Grove, that's me. I originally did, I think, the blog on WordPress, but I mostly do the Facebook and the Instagram now. So
Gotcha. Is there any particular music that you listen to while you're digging around with the dead?
no, usually I actually don't. But I do when I go do my preservation. A lot of the times, and people may think it's weird, but I'll talk to the person while I'm working on their stone, and I don't expect them to talk back to me, but I at least I say their name out loud because I'm aware of the fact that a lot of the times I'm probably the first person to read or speak their name, and who knows how long, and so I'll say their name and talk to them a little and work on their stone and
If you go to
and
one of the local Halloween stores that are open right now, the pop-up ones, they're
oh yeah.
currently selling Beetlejuice's grave and the Beetlejuice light-up sign that has the arrow pointing down to where Beetlejuice is
Oh, cool.
buried. I was thinking about that the other day after I reminded myself that you were coming on this weekend, and I was like, "Oh, she's got to get one of these. Either get it now or wait till after Halloween because they're like
Awesome.
50%. They're like 50% off after Halloween
Oh,
because
that's so
the
cool.
light up Beetlejuice sign pointing down is like $50, but I figure
Oh,
again,
really?
yeah, wait until the day after Halloween and then maybe get it for 50%
Yeah,
off.
right. Oh my God, that's awesome. That's so cool.
Definitely,
Yeah,
definitely.
one year I dressed up as the Grim Reaper. I put a full face covering shroud thing on,
Oh my
and
god.
had a fake scythe, and I went out and I stood in the just I didn't go in the actual graveyard because that's not really allowed after dark, but I stood at the gate and
That doesn't seem
I
to
just
stop
held out
people.
a candy bowl, and I had the gloves on with the skeleton hands, and people were like, either they would come up and take the candy or they would be completely freaked out and run away, but the brave kids came and took the candy. So I had a lot of fun. I think I did that maybe 2009, so it was a good time.
I dressed up as the Grim Reaper for Halloween 2014. I went and saw a live production of the one-man show of Nevermore performed by Jeffrey Combs, the actor Jeffrey Combs.
Oh, cool. Nice.
Definitely. All right. Well, thank you again, Sarah, so much for coming on the show.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me.